The following story is a translated and adapted conversation, recounting supernatural experiences from around the world. This content is intended for entertainment purposes only. Listen with an open mind and enjoy the thrill of the unknown. The content in this video is purely for entertainment. Viewer discretion is advised. If you are easily frightened, be prepared some stories might just send chills down your spine. If you're ready, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and immerse yourself in the world of the unexplained.
The glow beyond the trees. December 26, 1980. Dawned frigid and still over the sleepy expanse of Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. The air bit at the skin, heavy with the damp scent of pine and moss, as a thin frost glazed the earth. Beyond the eastern edge of the woods stood RAF Woodbridge, a US Air Force base humming with Cold War tension, its floodlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. The forest itself was an ancient sprawl, 5.8 square miles of twisted oaks and towering conifers, a place where locals whispered of restless spirits and lights that danced without source. Tonight, those whispers would turn to screams. It began at 3 a.m. Airman First Class John Burrows and his patrol partner, Ed Cabanseg, trudged along the perimeter near the base's east gate, their breath fogging in the icy air. The wind was a faint murmur, threading through the branches with a low, mournful sigh till it stopped. Dead silence gripped the night, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes your pulse thud louder. Then they saw it. A flicker of light, blue and sharp, piercing the tree line. A downed plane. Cabansig muttered, his voice tight. Burrows shook his head, eyes narrowing. It wasn't falling, it was moving, darting between the trees with a purpose that felt alive. They radioed Sergeant Jim Peniston, their supervisor, who joined them with a mix of skepticism and duty. Permission crackled over the line from the flight chief. Investigate, but no weapons beyond the base's jurisdiction. They were on their own. The trio stepped into the forest, boots crunching on frozen needles, the air growing thicker, heavier, as if resisting their advance. The wind returned, but it was wronger staccato whistle, high and jagged, slicing through the stillness like a blade. The farm animals near the forest's edge erupted into chaos, cows lowing, dogs barking hysterically, their cries swallowed by the deepening hum that pulsed from the ground itself. The light grew brighter, splitting into strobes of blue, red, and orange, weaving through the trees. Peniston led the way, his flashlight beam trembling as it caught something solid akraft. Triangular, metallic, no more than 9 feet across and 6 feet high. Its surface gleamed black under the pulsing lights, etched with symbols that twisted like living things. It rested on 3 slender legs, hovering an inch above the soil, the air around it shimmering with heat despite the winter chill. Burrows reached out, his hand shaking, and felt a jolt, not pain, but a surge of energy that buzzed up his arm and into his skull, a sensation of being watched from within. "Get back," Peniston barked, but the craft responded. The lights flared, a blinding white that seared their retinas, and it rose, weaving upward through the branches with impossible grace, snapping twigs and leaving scorch marks on bark. Then it was gone, streaking into the sky faster than sound, the hum fading into an oppressive silence. The men stumbled back to base, dazed, their uniforms dusted with a fine grey ash that reeked of burnt metal. 2 hours had passed, or so their watchers said, but it felt like minutes. The forest swallowed their questions, leaving only the echo of that whistle in their ears. Daylight brought no answers. At sunrise, Peniston returned with a team, finding 3 depressions in the soil, a perfect triangle, each mark 12 feet apart, too precise for nature. Nearby trees bore burns, their trunks radiating heat when touched. and a Geiger counter clicked faintly above normal levels. Local police arrived at 10:30 a.m., skeptical, muttering about rabbit scrapes. But the symmetry silenced their doubts. The wind picked up again, carrying a faint tic-tic mechanical rhythm that seemed to mock their search. Burroughs rubbed his temples. A headache throbbed, and his skin tingled where he'd felt that energy. That night, the base buzzed with unease. Floodlights flickered, malfunctioning despite fresh batteries, and the wind howled with a new ferocity, bending trees into unnatural arcs. Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, a pragmatic officer with no patience for ghost stories, heard the rumors and scoffed. But when reports of lights returned on December 28th, he grabbed a tape recorder, a radiation meter, and a small team sergeant, Robert Ball, a photographer, and a few others, and marched into the woods to debunk it once and for all. The forest greeted them with a suffocating stillness. The wind died mid-step, replaced by a low drone that vibrated their teeth. Holt's tape hissed to life. 1:35 a.m., we're at the site now. His voice steadied, but the team's breaths quickened as a red glow pulsed through the trees, moving horizontally, bobbing like a lantern held by an unseen hand. It's weaving through the pines. Under intelligent control, Holt narrated, his tone shifting from curiosity to alarm. The light split, revealing a craft smaller than the first, its surface a dull crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat. It hovered, then darted, bathing the clearing in a scarlet haze. Ball aimed his camera, but the shutter jammed. The radiation meter spiked 5 times background levels near the depression's end. The air grew electric, prickling their skin. A beam shot downward, thin and laser-like, landing 10 feet from Holt. "I'm in shock," he rasped into the recorder, his voice trembling. The beam swept over the base, chatter erupting over the radio. "It's in the weapons storage area." Then the craft tilted, its lights flaring white, and rocketed northward, vanishing into the night. The wind returned with a vengeance, a shrieking wail that carried whispers, fragments of voices, garbled and alien, fading into the drone. The next morning, Holt's team found more: broken branches, scorched earth, and a lingering heat in the trees facing the clearing. The base's radar logs, later uncovered, showed an unidentified boogie tracked by RAF Bentwaters and Wattisham Airfield, lost near Rendlesham. Witnesses multiplied. 15 airmen claimed sightings over those nights, some describing figures near the craft. Tall, thin, with elongated limbs and glowing slits for eyes, moving with a jerky precision that chilled the blood. Burroughs and Penniston, haunted by headaches and fragmented dreams, suffered PTSD, their lives unraveling under the weight of what they'd touched. Why did it happen here? The bases housed nuclear weapons, a Cold War prize that might have drawn eyes from beyond door. Perhaps the forest itself, steeped in centuries of folklore, hid something older, awakened by the hum of military machines. The wind that night carried no answers, only that relentless tick-tick-tick, a sound that followed Holt home, echoing in his sleep. The Ministry of Defense dismissed it. No threat to national security, but the tapes, the burns, the testimonies defied explanation. Years later, Rendlesham remains a wound in the fabric of reality. The forest whispers still a drone beneath the wind, a light flickering through the trees, a presence waiting. For Holt, Burroughs, and Penniston, it's no mystery to solve. It's a truth they can't unsee, a terror that clings like frost to their bones. The Lanterns of the Lost. In the heart of Aizen, Thailand's northeastern hinterland, the village of Ban Nong Keo lay cradled between endless rice paddies and gnarled tamarind trees. It was a place where the sun blazed by day and the nights stretched long and humid, thick with the chirps of crickets and the croaks of frogs. By October, when the harvest moon hung low and swollen, the air carried a faint tinge of burnt straw and mudder, time when the villagers huddled in their bamboo homes, wary of the tales their elders spun. Stories of pop-wandering spirits were common, but there was another legend, whispered only in hushed tones: the drifting lanterns, lights that hovered over the fields, luring the unwary into the dark. Somsri, a wiry farmer in her late 30s with calloused hands and a sharp gaze, had grown up on these tales. Her grandfather once swore he'd seen a glowing orb chase a buffalo into the forest, only for the beast to return days later, wild-eyed and silent. Most dismissed it as drunken ramblings, but Somsri felt the weight of those words every time she crossed the paddies at dusk. On this night, with the moon casting a silver glow over the fields, she lingered late to mend a broken fish trap by the canal. Her lantern flickered beside her, its flame dancing in the sticky breeze, while the distant hum of the village faded into the chorus of the night. The wind shifted first, soft sigh that turned sharp and erratic, whistling through the rice stalks like a blade slicing silk. The crickets stopped mid-note, their silence jarring, and the frogs followed, leaving only the faint gurgle of the canal. Samsri paused, her fingers tightening on the bamboo, and glanced upward. A light blinked above the field knot, the warm yellow of a firefly or the steady pulse of a plane, but a cold green shimmer that pulsed irregularly, hovering 50 feet above the ground. It circled slowly, tracing a lazy spiral over the paddies, its glow painting the rice in sickly hues. "Spirit trick," she muttered, forcing a laugh, but her pulse quickened. She'd heard the stories lights that led to madness, to disappearances. Old Man Bunchai vanished for a night last harvest, returning with white streaks in his hair and a stammered tale of small ones with red eyes. Somsri grabbed her lantern and stood, ready to retreat, when the wind died completely. The air thickened, pressing against her chest, and a new sound emerged, a low, buzzing drone, like a swarm of bees trapped underground, vibrating through the mud into her bare feet. The light descended, splitting into 3 orbs that danced in a tight triangle, their glow intensifying until it stung her eyes. She turned to run, her flip-flops slapping the path, but the drone grew louder, rattling her teeth. The canal's water rippled backward, defying the current, and the tamarind trees bent inward, their branches clawing at the sky. A shadow loomed behind her, too sharp, too solid for a trick of the moon. She stumbled, dropping the lantern, its flames snuffing out in the mud. The orbs converged, merging into a single beam that bathed her in green light, cold as frost despite the humid night. Her limbs locked, her breath caught, and the world tilted as she felt herself lifted weightless, helpless into the dark. When Samsri awoke, she was no longer in the field. She lay on a smooth, curved surface, slick and frigid, its edges glowing faintly blue. The air reeked of sulfur and something sharper like burnt wire and rotting fruit stinging her nostrils. The room was a dome, its walls seamless and metallic, pulsing with veins of light that snaked upward and vanished into a ceiling lost in shadow. Her arms and legs were pinned, not by ropes, but by an unseen force that tightened when she struggled, her skin prickling as if ants crawled beneath it. The drone was deafening now, a relentless hum that burrowed into her skull, drowning her thoughts. A shadow moved small, no taller than a child, stepping into the blue glow. Its skin was grey, slick as a frog's, glistening with a sheen that caught the light. Its head was too large, bald, with no ears or nose, just two glowing red eyes, round and unblinking like embers in a dead fire. Its limbs were thin, jointed oddly, ending in fingers that tapered to sharp points. Clicking softly against the floor, tick-ticked. Another joined it, then a third, their movements synchronized, their eyes fixed on her with a cold, predatory curiosity. Samsri's scream lodged in her throat, her voice stolen by the thick air. We know. You. The words didn't come from their mouths, slits too small to speak, but exploded in her mind, a buzzing chorus that clawed at her sanity. She thrashed, her heart hammering, as one raised a claw, a thin needle extending from its tip, glowing faintly orange. It leaned closer, its breath a chill mist that smelled of decay, and pressed the needle to her temple, not piercing, but probing, sending a jolt of pain that seared her thoughts. Images flashed, the village burning, the moon bleeding red, her own hands clawing at the earth. Were these visions, memories they planted? She couldn't tell. The second figure tilted its head, its red eyes flaring. You, call us. It hissed into her mind. Samsri's stomach dropped. Call them. She hadn't, unless the realization hit like a stone. The elders warned against it, singing old harvest songs alone in the fields at night. They were offerings to the land spirits, but what if they'd been signals, ancient chants that echoed beyond the stars? She'd hummed one absently while mending the trap, a habit from childhood. That's why they came. That's why they chose her. The needle dug deeper, not into her flesh but her essence, pulling at her fears, her mother's death, the floods that took their home, twisting them into nightmares she couldn't escape. The walls pulsed faster, the blue veins writhing like living things, and the drone morphed into a shriek of wind that wasn't wind, tearing at her ears. Through a narrow slit in the dome, she glimpsed the sky. The moon fractured, its edges jagged, stars too bright and too many, spiraling in patterns no human could name. Time blurred minutes or hours, she couldn't tell. The figures stepped back, their claws clicking in unison, and the restraints vanished. Samsri collapsed, gasping, her body trembling as the floor tilted beneath her. She slid downward, tumbling through a void of light and shadow, until she hit the ground with a wet thud, the smell of mud and rice flooding back. Dawn broke over Bannan Ko, grey and heavy with mist. A fisherman found Samsri sprawled in the paddy, her clothes soaked, her hair streaked white at the roots. Her eyes were wide, staring at nothing, and her fingers clutched a shard of black stone smooth, warm, etched with faint, spiraling lines. The field bore a scorched circle, the rice within it withered to ash, and the air buzzed faintly, a lingering drone that made the fisherman's skin crawl. Samsri didn't speak for days, her voice locked behind a wall of terror. When she finally did, her words were fractured, red eyes, small ones. They knew me. The villagers avoided her, whispering of curses, but she sat by the canal each night, gazing at the sky, her face etched with dread. The paddies grew quiet after that, no crickets, no frogs, just a wind that carried a faint tick-tick-tick, rising and falling like a heartbeat. Some swore they saw the green lights again, circling in the distance, waiting. Why here? The elders spoke of ancient stones buried in the fields, relics of a forgotten people who sang to the heavens. Perhaps the songs were never for spirits, but for something else, something that listened, that remembered. For Samsri, it was no tale to dismiss. It was a wound in her soul, a truth that watched from the dark. It all began with 3 shepherd children in the quiet village of Portugal. Lucia dos Santos, aged 10, and her cousins, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, had claimed that the Virgin Mary had appeared to them multiple times. Beginning in May 1917, according to Lucia, the Lady from Heaven had foretold a miraculous sign that would take place. On October 13th, 1917, a sign that would make even non-believers fall to their knees. The news spread like wildfire. By the time the prophesied day arrived, over 70,000 people had gathered in Covidar Iria, a large field near Fatima. They came in doubt, faith, and fear, but none of them were prepared for what they were about to witness. The sun begins to dance. It had been raining heavily all morning, leaving the crowd cold and soaked. But then, at noon, exactly, the rain suddenly stopped. The clouds parted, and the sun began to move. Eyewitnesses described it as spinning like a wheel, changing colors, and even plunging toward the earth before returning to its normal position. Screams filled the air. People wept, prayed, and collapsed in terror. Even journalists and skeptics, who had arrived to debunk the miracle, stood frozen in shock. A message from the sky, or something else? Some believed this was a divine miracle, a sign from God, but others whispered a different explanation. A UFO. What if this was not the Virgin Mary's miracle, but rather an extraterrestrial event, one of the earliest recorded UFO sightings in human history? What if the children's visions had been contact with something beyond our world? As the sun returned to its place, the crowd was left in awe and terror. And though the church would later canonize the event as a religious miracle, some would never stop questioning what they truly saw, because some witnesses swore they had seen shadows moving within the light. As the sun returned to normal, an eerie silence fell over the crowd. People dropped to their knees, some crying, others murmuring prayers, but a few, shaking with fear, whispered among themselves, "Did you see them?" Because some witnesses swore amidst the swirling lights and colors they had seen figures inside the light. What did the witnesses see? Many who were there that day described what they saw in strikingly similar detail. A silver disc shimmering in the sky, beams of colorful light radiating from it, shifting between blue, yellow, red, and violet. The feeling of electricity in the air causing goosebumps and dizziness. And then the shadows. Not everyone saw them, but those who did described tall, thin silhouettes moving inside the light as if something or someone was looking down at them. Some fell to their knees, believing they had just witnessed a divine miracle, but others, shaken to their core, whispered that this was something else entirely. In modern times, many UFO researchers have re-examined the Fatima event. Could it have been one of the earliest documented UFO sightings in human history? Consider the details. The spinning, glowing object closely matches many modern UFO sightings. Witnesses reported heat, electromagnetic disturbances, and altered perception symptoms commonly associated with UFO encounters. Some even claimed that their clothing, which had been drenched from the rain, was suddenly dry after the event, an unexplained phenomenon that could suggest radiation or energy exposure. A censored secret. Some have speculated that the Catholic Church knew more than they admitted. Decades later, reports emerged that the third secret of Fatima prophecy supposedly revealed to Lucia dos Santos was never fully disclosed. Could the real message have been about an extraterrestrial presence? Was this a warning, not from heaven, but from beyond the stars? And if so, what were they trying to tell us? After the bizarre events of October 13th, 1917, the world took notice. Newspapers across Portugal and beyond reported on what thousands had witnessed in Fatima. But what's strange is how the government and church reacted. Instead of openly embracing what could have been considered a divine event, officials seemed uneasy. Some priests were hesitant to declare it an official miracle. The government, already skeptical of religious movements, treated it as mass hysteria. But behind closed doors, whispers of something more mysterious spread. Shortly after the event, Lucia dos Santos, the main visionary of Fatima, was taken into seclusion by the church. She was closely monitored and questioned about the visions she had experienced. Rumors later surfaced that she had revealed a third secret one, so shocking and terrifying that the Vatican refused to release it for decades. Could it have been something otherworldly? UFO researchers speculate that the church may have been aware of extraterrestrial contact but kept it hidden. Some strange facts about the case. The miracle matched modern UFO encounters: spinning, glowing objects, strange electromagnetic effects, witnesses feeling heat, dizziness, and time distortion. The Vatican delayed the release of the third secret until 2000, and even then, many believe they did not reveal the full contents. A UFO connection. Some reports claim that even before 1917, people in Fatima had seen odd lights in the sky. Could this have been an ongoing extraterrestrial presence? A new perspective? Was Fatima a close encounter? What if the children were not just experiencing a religious vision, but were in fact in contact with an advanced intelligence? Could the beings project images into their minds? Was the spinning sun a craft, distorting light and space around it? Did the Vatican hide the real message because it suggested an alien origin? As the years passed, Fatima remained a place of religious significance. But for those who look deeper, it may also be one of the most compelling UFO cases in history. Because if the miracle of the sun wasn't a miracle at all, then what was it? And perhaps more importantly, will it happen again? The events of October 13th, 1917 may have ended, but the mystery had only begun. For years, locals in Fatima and surrounding areas continued to report odd occurrences. Unusual lights in the sky, sudden temperature drops in certain parts of the village, strange metallic sounds heard in the fields at night. Could this mean that whatever had appeared that day never truly left? Some of the original witnesses, those who were still alive decades later, began to share their doubts about the official version of events. One survivor, an elderly man who had been a child at the time, claimed in a rare interview, "It was not the sun. The sun does not move like that. It was something else." Another witness described a floating, glowing object that seemed to pulse as if alive. Hidden connections to other UFO events. Researchers have found intriguing parallels between the miracle of the sun and modern UFO cases. The Phoenix Lights, 1997, USA. A massive, silent craft seen by thousands, affected electronic devices and caused emotional reactions similar to Fatima. The Rendlesham Forest Incident, 1980, UK. Military personnel encountered a glowing object that moved strangely, just like the sun at Fatima. Some even received telepathic messages, just as Lucia claimed in 1917. The Voronezh Encounter, 1989, Russia. A group of children saw an otherworldly being step out of a glowing craft, similar to Lucia's vision of a lady from the sky. There are long-standing rumors that secret Vatican archives hold information about extraterrestrial life. Pope John XXIII allegedly claimed to have had personal contact with a being not of this earth. Vatican astronomers have openly stated they are searching for signs of alien life. And the third secret of Fatima, the final revelation given to Lucia, remains shrouded in mystery. If the Fatima event was not divine, but extraterrestrial, then what was the message? Was it a warning? Was it an experiment? Or was it a sign that we are not alone? For decades, rumors swirled about the third secret of Fatima, the final message given to Lucia by the mysterious apparition. The first two secrets were revealed to the public and spoke of visions of hell and the end of World War I. But the third secret was withheld for years. Even when the Vatican finally released it in 2000, many believe it was heavily censored. Could this secret contain clues about extraterrestrial involvement? Sister Lucia, the only surviving witness, lived the rest of her life in a convent. She rarely spoke of the third secret, but in her private letters she made cryptic statements. There will be great confusion and deception. A time will come when the truth will be known, but many will refuse to see. The stars will fall, and the world will tremble. Some researchers believe these could refer to an alien disclosure event, where humanity finally learns the truth about otherworldly visitors. The Vatican has maintained an astronomical observatory for centuries, studying the cosmos. But in recent years, reports have surfaced that they are searching for something specific. Vatican astronomers have openly discussed the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Some leaked documents suggest a connection between Fatima and modern UFO research. A few believe the Church has been preparing for an eventual alien contact. Could the Vatican hold classified information about what really happened in 1917? In July 2023, a former US intelligence officer testified before Congress, claiming that the government has non-human spacecraft in its possession. Some classified files allegedly contain images of glowing aerial objects that resemble the descriptions from Fatima. The Pentagon's secret UFO task force has investigated cases that mirror what happened in Portugal. Could the miracle of the sun have been an early UFO sighting, misinterpreted as a religious event? Sister Lucia, the last surviving witness of the Fatima apparitions, lived in isolation for most of her life. But shortly before her death, in 2005, she allegedly made one final statement, one that was never officially published. A visitor who met her in her final years claims she whispered, "They are watching, they have never left." Was she referring to the entities behind the miracle of the sun? Had she uncovered something that couldn't be revealed? In 2010, a former Vatican archivist claimed that classified documents exist regarding the Fatima event. According to his testimony, the original descriptions of the lady were altered before being made public. Some early records did not describe a Virgin Mary figure, but rather a shining humanoid with no clear facial features. The Vatican allegedly withheld details about the moving sun, which closely resembles modern reports of UFO sightings. What if the Church knew that what happened in 1917 was not a divine event, but something extraterrestrial? In 1977, the CIA reportedly compiled a secret study on mass UFO sightings throughout history. One section allegedly examined Fatima and other similar cases. It suggested that advanced non-human intelligence may have been conducting experiments on human perception for centuries. The report concluded that many so-called religious miracles could be reinterpreted as UFO or related events. Could the same intelligence that caused the Fatima phenomenon still be influencing our world today? Some researchers believe the entities behind the Fatima event were delivering a warning not about religion, but about something much greater. Lucia's visions spoke of a world in crisis, disasters, and an impending reckoning. Could this have been a prediction of environmental collapse, global war, or even alien disclosure? Was humanity being prepared for something that hasn't happened yet? And most importantly, are they still watching? The miracle of the sun remains one of history's most mysterious and controversial events. Was it truly a divine intervention? Or was it one of the earliest mass UFO encounters ever recorded? The secrets of Fatima may still be buried in the Vatican's archives. Eyewitness accounts, once dismissed, now resemble modern UFO reports. And recent government disclosures hint that there may be more connections between historical sightings and extraterrestrial activity than we ever realized. What do you believe?